further investigation for impeding. So we plunged down the hill into Acqua Minerale with the Alpine's rear wing snaking around on the back. Saw that a couple of years ago in the known as Renault. And he has the sparks from the underside of the car, playing himself into form earlier on. His teammates is just a few metres behind, heading to the Variante Alta. Over that curve, apply the power, stay out of the gravel. And Colapinto dancing it right to the edge of the green-painted curve. The man who won here last year, spectacular fashion. Last lap pass for the lead here in Formula 2 for the sprint. Goes P10 in his second session of his return to Formula 1 as his teammate goes P5.
Happy with the car, both Gasly and, well, Colapinto getting a first taste of the car earlier on, but Pierre much happier, and he's back up in the top 5. So Alpine, for all the turmoil off the track in the last 2 weeks, on it, they've started reasonably well so far this weekend. Obviously, there's a good race team there at Alpine that, they know how to execute good races. Engineering team, the mechanics, still at the Enstone factory. All the management changes, they kind of don't impact your day-to-day as an engineer, as a mechanic, and as a Pierre Gasly, not outgoing or incoming driver. So you can just focus on it. And Pierre's been asked about how do these things affect you? Ollie Oak's departure, new teammate, technically without a team principal at the moment, although we know who's running the team. It's when you're actually in there, you're just thinking, I'm still working with my race engineer, I'm still dealing with the same guys in the garage. Things don't change as much as they might appear from the outside.
Gasly set an identical lap time to Oscar Piastri.
Oh, the klaxon.
And there it is. Devotees to F1 TV practice will know how much we enjoy an identical lap time. 1:16.152 on the board. Absolutely equal for 4th and 5th.
I think Alpine, not just with their identical lap time, I think they're one of two teams that started the season without introducing a new car. In fact, we can see both of those old specification 2024 cars on your screen at the moment, Williams and Alpine. But Alpine, I think, have really kind of underperformed the potential performance of their car this season. Jack Doohan, I think, could have gone a lot better in Miami without a few hiccups we saw. He was very strong all weekend, and I think it's very harsh that he didn't get to really show what he could do. But also, I think a number of other occasions for Gasly, the cars looked really strong at certain points, certain sessions, and then it's not worked out on strategy, or something's just gone a little bit wrong for them in every race so far. But I do think, like as is the case with Williams, that old car is still proving to be relatively competitive, but we're not really seeing it yet fully in the race results.
Yeah, Pierre Gasly, 1 point scoring finish in the Grand Prix season so far. That was 7th place, overtaken on the last lap for P6 by Max Verstappen in Bahrain. That's the only time they visited the point so far. That was the track at which Alpine have had their strongest performance all year long. Jack Doohan was in the points for over 20 laps of that Grand Prix before the timing of the strategy and the intervention. I can't remember if it was a virtual or a full safety car, but the timing of it worked against him. It's been a long week. George Russell has a personal best in the first sector.
Soft tyres on early for Russell. He is the first driver out there. In fact, he's the only driver out there right now, and he's bolted on the C6. So, full anger in the Mercedes. The attitude of the car, you can see it just puffing out a little bit of floor from the exit of Piratella, the quick left-hander, through Acqua Minerale. Got to find a braking point for the Variante Alta. It's very easy to snatch the right front and end up lawn mowing, as Lewis Hamilton did earlier on, just cutting through that chicane. But Russell's through there neatly with the best middle sector of anyone else, and now there's just 2 corners remaining.
So the left-handers of the Ravazzas. Let's see what sort of grip he's got on the C6 tyre.
He was late on the brakes onto that first lap.
Up through the gears to the top of the pile by how much? 2.5 tenths of a second. George Russell vaults ahead of Lando Norris. Russell, who's been on the front row earlier this year, chases his maiden pole position of the season in round 7.
So we're not expecting a massive improvement from the C5 to the C6. It's the softest compound in the new range, but it's a new tyre. And It's basically it's a step softer than we had last year, but it's not like the big gulfs that you see on the upper end of the range, all of which should be hopefully narrowed this year compared to last. How will Russell's lap there? It was a clean lap, it was a tidy lap, but it was also the first, and you can still see everyone else waiting in the garage. How will that stack up when everyone else goes? It's the early gauntlet laid down there from George.
Yeah, George Russell, who has already finished on the podium as many times this season as he did all of last, 4 times on the top 3 by the end of a Sunday.
It's a good start, that.
I enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, nice one.
There we are, FP2 stat stuff for us.
I think it tells quite a big story of Mercedes, actually, because we remember Mercedes last year as being race winners with both Russell and Hamilton on multiple occasions, finished the year well, but actually, when you consider that he had 4 podiums in 24 races, and he's achieved 4 podiums in 6 races this year, and George is still nipping at the heels of Max in the Drivers' Championship. This car has gone from being brilliant on an outlier day to being very consistent. So I think it's a stat that really tells the story of where Mercedes have come on in 12 months, I think.
Let's go down to Mercedes, where Ruth is standing by.
Yeah, standing by as Kimi Antonelli fires up. But what I want to show you is this new front wing. You can see they've changed the front wing cords, which is a fancy way of the flaps at the front. And that is to improve the flow going to the back of the car. They did that last year very successfully in Canada for an upgrade. And I believe Sam's got a little bit more information on what they've also done with the suspension fairings.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Basically, what Mercedes has been doing here is copying McLaren's homework slightly. You can see the section I'm talking about here, this wing shape that's sort of around the upper mounting point. You can also see they've done it on the lower wishbone mounting point as well. Now, these wing sections are deliberately designed to generate a bit more downforce. They are absolutely there to increase the load across the bodywork of the car. Just get a little bit of free downforce. McLaren were actually the first team to go down this route earlier in this season, and Mercedes clearly taking an envious look down the pit lane at the changes they've made, along with that new front wing, of course, and there are some changes to the rear bodywork. I'm not actually going to put that on the screen because they're so subtle that all you'd see is a lot of yellow lines like this on the screen that don't actually look like very much because the paint job just covers it all up really, really well. But Alex Jakes, I do know that Alex Brundle has been eavesdropping on the Mercedes team, and I want to know what he's got to say.
I was really looking forward to you drawing as many yellow lines as possible on that. I don't think I've ever been more disappointed to hear from Alex Brundle.
This is the scenario we get when it's impossible for Sam Collins to run out of ink. I have been eavesdropping on the Mercedes. George Russell, a lot of grip with that C6 tyre, but the balance looks worse for the car as they've moved across onto it. He said that the rear tyre is overheating after that first run. A little bit of teamwork between the two Mercedes. He's told the team to target lower in terms of rear tyre temperature for the run that's about to come for Kimi Antonelli.
So good working together for Mercedes. You had George Russell earlier on the radio giving feedback about the plank wear. And now you're looking at the reigning world champion, the man with the most pole positions this year, racing in a circuit this weekend that he has won 3 times in a row at in 2021. In 2022, the postponement forced by the flooding in 23 means that he had to wait to complete the hat-trick in 2024, but he has been masterful around here. Was chased all the way home by Lando Norris, under a second across the line, like it was between Norris and Verstappen in Melbourne, only the positions swapped around, and we are heading through some wonderful motor racing corners here into the Variante Alta, and heading trackside to Davide Valsecchi standing by at turn 17. We're sending you a world champion, Davide.
Alex, Verstappen is coming, Rivazza, look at it, curb outside and then using all the track at the exit. It's impressive the speed, how they approach the brake in the downhill to Rivazza. Last year the pole position was made by in 4th gear that corner. Now we have Antonelli. Come on, Kimi, show me the speed. Now we have Berman in front of Kimi that probably Probably Kimi made a little mistake and just threw away the lap. Hülkenberg behind him, and then Norris that is getting ready for his lap. Impressive. The speed in the downhill. Look at the Racing Bull. And then you have to use all this curb and open the throttle and use the exit curb there. Very risky, because you are at the end of the lap. You start to losing the rear grip. Tsunoda with Red Bull, let me see. Maybe he missed a bit the apex. Probably Ajar is coming with Racing Bull. Using the exit curb here, not too much, and then open the throttle for the exit. Well done, Ajar. I don't know the lap time, guys, but they know that the pole position was set fourth gear in both of the Rivazza corner, and then it's not easy to control the car there in the last corner before the main straight. Usually the rear is going away, and you have a bit of snap oversteer. Anyway, beautiful place. Back to you, Alex.
Wonderful descriptions, Davide. The order is George Russell ahead of Max Verstappen, Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda after those runs. Just very quickly before we finish the Norris lap, Davide Valsecchi is an Inter Milan fan, right? They had an incredible second leg semi-final of the Champions League with Barcelona. Imagine how excited Davide was getting in his living room when Inter were ahead, behind, and then going through in an epic tussle. Lando Norris, fastest middle sector of anyone so far. And he's fastest by 0.3 of a second. That McLaren working beautifully.
We saw Charles Leclerc at the end of the Davide side-by-side there, sweeping through that final corner as well and getting his Ferrari up towards the pace of Russell and Verstappen. Norris has taken that gap away as Piastri looked like he was understeering there into the second part of Aqua Minerale. Very quick through the first sector. He's still very quick in the middle sector. Gasly goes up to second and Piastri is hustling on.
Big moment, dancing over the curb. How many times do we see that last year from Oscar Piastri? He has been very impressive, improving his one-lap pace. He's got cars in the way as he comes out of the second Rivazza. They duck out of the way. It's a narrow racetrack, but it's a Piastri racetrack right now by 0.02 of a second. It remains a McLaren 1-2. But that was spectacular stuff at the top of the hill.
It was spectacular. It wasn't the quickest final sector by any means, as we see Sainz having a similar big moment coming out of the Variante Alta. Piastri lost 1/4 of a second there compared to Norris in the final sector. Maybe a little bit of traffic as well at the final corner. There's plenty more time in there for him.
His damn brakes, mate. His brakes are a problem.
So Hamilton is yet to improve on a soft. I think he's aborted a lap or two as Sainz goes over the line and was also having an armful of oversteer at the end of the lap.
His damn brakes, mate. His brakes are a problem.
Cutting the lawn.
So Antonelli there, that's why Davide was so excited for him to come through at full tilt, and that's why he did not come through to the next corner at full tilt. The brake materials, you do get a difference in feeling. I did a back-to-back test day.
I put quite hard in 11-12 and rear again, what I mentioned.
Okay, understood.
So that's Aqua Minerale, the corner before that chicane there that Verstappen's struggling with. Yeah, I did a back-to-back day trying to assess this.
I put quite hard in 11-12 and rear again, what I mentioned.
Okay, understood.
Then became the Renault brakes as well, the carbon industry. Personal preference, and I was surprised how much difference there was in feel, but actually when you look at the pure performance of the brakes, the deceleration, there wasn't so much there, but the braking phase sets up your whole corner. So you hit the brakes hard, the maybe the performance is the same, but if you're feeling the grip and you're feeling the attitude of the car change at the end of braking or the start of braking, it can give you performance through the mid-corner phase.
What we're talking about is carbon fibre, carbon brake disc and carbon brake pads, a bit like you find on an aeroplane or a fighter jet. That's where that technology has come through, and that's where Carbon Industry made all of their technology. But it doesn't mean you're changing your brake calipers, it doesn't mean you're changing your brake design, but it's just literally the discs and the pads that you might go to your normal workshop and change out when your road car runs out of brakes. It's exactly the same system, but materials are just slightly more advanced. And as you say, Jolien, there are driver preferences on this, and I wonder, is Lewis just finding that Ferrari's choice for brake friction material, which I suspect will be made not far up the road from here by Brembo, is not to his taste?
But also there's so many things that have changed from Mercedes to Ferrari for Lewis. So it's trying to recalibrate your mind on everything, and just a feeling of brake. In the grand scheme of things, it's a subtlety, that. And it can change also depending on brake temperatures more than anything.
The brakes on mode warm-up are horrendous. Like, it's not braking.
Yeah, we can think about something for tomorrow.
These C6 tyres are super fragile, as Norris almost hurls it off the road at the final corner and might have been heading towards the top before he did that. They're trying to use it as a tool, and obviously they're not using the brakes very much, as it turns out, with that.
Ferrari, it's worth noting, has introduced a new brake cooling package at the rear of the car this weekend, but it hasn't introduced a new specification of parts at the front. However, the teams can change the cooling levels on those front brake scoops and on that front brake package using old parts, and they don't have to declare it. So we don't know what they're running at the front, but what we do know is what they're running at the rear is completely new.
There's a few moments out there that we can talk about as we have times on the board. Hamilton improved up to 9th. That was Charles Leclerc going through the Tamburello chicane. He's now down to 10th because Albon is in 9th. Kimi Antonelli did improve his lap time. It's only good enough for 17th. He had a moment in the first sector.
What's interesting when you watch the two Ferraris laps on board, the lap before this one, Lewis Hamilton ditched. He wasn't very happy with it. It's exactly what we can see on screen now. The brake efficiency is not very good. So what they're having to do is crank steering on in the middle of the corner to actually slow the car down in the middle of the corner. And that's giving the car really difficult balance through the apex. It's not just in those early few apexes of the lap either, which is where you expect them to have brake problems because of the long straight cooling the brakes down. It's all the way around. So they're still struggling on the braking zone, for example, into Agua Minerale and into Variante Alta, when the brakes should be well up and running from multiple braking hits. Not a good racetrack to have issues with the brakes. There are 7 different over 2G braking zones here. It's one of the toughest braking events of the year.
And it's one that I think you need to finesse the brakes more than just stamp the brakes, isn't it? You get certain, like your Bahrains, where you just mash the pedal, the car slows down, and then you blend off, and it's much easier. Here it's a bit bumpy, it's sort of like mid-range braking.
Well, you look at Agua Minerale entry, the entry to the Villeneuve chicane, you're dealing with having to modulate the brake pedal all the way in and affect the attitude of the car all the way in. Even Ravazza, where you have that heavy downhill decline towards the first apex, is a tricky braking zone, as you say, where you have to not lock over the nasty bumps and try to manage the attitude into that first apex. So yeah, a lot going on with both the braking bias, the efficiency of the brakes, and also the migration of that bias through the braking zone.
In the end, Ferrari have found a little bit of pace with Hamilton to find a few tenths to get him to 11th. Leclerc had done that lap earlier on that got him within a tenth of Russell. So Gasly's done a bit of a flyer in the Alpine. Strong day for Alpine.
Honestly, every time we do a practice broadcast, I get excited about identical lap times. You get excited about Gasly. It happens every single time. Let's send it to Davide Valsecchi, who has more cars heading his way at Ravazza.
Max, the conditions are perfect and the track seems very, very fast. Consider that they are 7/10 already faster than the best Friday lap time of the past season, so they are flying. And in the last sector is Norris, that is the quickest at the moment, by nothing in front of Gasly. You were saying Alpine is flying, Gasly is magical in these last two corners in Rivazza. Struggling a bit Ferrari with the performance, with Leclerc slightly better than Hamilton, but not very close to them. And did you saw Norris in the last try? He was the fastest one in the second sector, approached the Rivazza in the last corner. He was not able to lift the throttle off, and the entry speed was just too quick and too fast. He slid completely, and then he left the throttle to don't crash, and he threw away his lap time. Anyway, Norris in that lap was flying, mistaking Rivazza, and threw away the chance to get top of the board. Who is coming? I think Haas. Very clean exit. You can hear from the sound here.
Grip numerous times.
a diffuser. Really clever area of development and something a number of teams haven't done. At the rear of the car, for this weekend, they flanked off this cooling panel on the side of the car. You often see that with a bunch of gills on, but that shows you they're just trying to reduce drag and trying to increase their top speed. But most interestingly to me is that Red Bull, after all of that talk about McLaren's rear brake cooling, well, Red Bull has introduced a new brake cooling package at the rear of the car, just here. And you can see those cooling outlets slightly reshaped and a new channel added on the exit. Has Red Bull discovered a little trick to work on its rear tyres as well? Well, we know they're all working on it, so has Red Bull found a way to do that as well? We'll find out.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you taking us through all of the upgrades. Plenty being brought. 8 teams have brought upgrades for this, the first European race of the 2025 season.
It's a key battleground, isn't it? The rear tyre temps and degradation. But it depends on weekend to weekend. Miami was massively rear tyre temp sensitive, rear degradation sensitive. This race shouldn't be, in theory, although we are exploring right now the limits of the tyres, and the data will be gathered later on, and we will see a little bit more if it will be rear tyre temp related in this softer compounds. So we can head back to Alex Brundle's minor complaints.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to
sign this one off. I'm completely Team Brundle on this one.
You're in charge of complaints corner.
So
I knew I'd have to wait for it, but I'd get there in the end.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add something to it. I think firstly, all these non-corners, for example, this one here, they've got to go. They're just not corners. They're parts of a straight. Anything that's easy flat out, even flat out on a motorbike, not a corner. Secondly, I think you've got to have a circuit with corner names and not numbers. So we can number the corners like that one that Bortoletto's just come through, turn 19, the absolutely flat out kink, or this one here, turn 1, before he gets to the first proper corner at turn 2. I think for true motorsport heritage, you've got to have corner names. And there's no reason not to.
We've got some wonderful corner names around this racetrack. We begin with the Tamburello chicane, then into the Villeneuve chicane, Tosa, Piratella, into Acqua Minerale, and then the Variante Alta, Ravazza. But that means under the, I don't want to call it a doctrine, but why not? Under the Brundle-Palmer doctrine, turn 1, gone. Turn 8, say goodbye. Turn 10, it's deleted. Turn 16, nope. And turn 19, no names, no corner numbers.
No one would miss them. No one would miss them at all. So I'm looking at the new tracks, and I'm calling on them to employ some corner names, not just numbers.
Totally that. Might I extend, given the general positivity of the room, chicanes where you brake once with an open exit. That's one corner.
I feel that you've thought about this a lot, and that we've finally given you a platform.
Welcome to my private time.
Now you're getting into nuance here. Now you're getting into nuance.
No, Palmer hasn't signed that one off.
So what are you calling Tamburello here?
You call one
corner?
turn.
No, that's 2. The final part of Tamburello doesn't count.
What, Ascari in Monza?
Are we going to go through all the corners in Italy?
We might.
Let's go for it.
We might.
I think I've taken this too far. There are people watching. Let's sign it off.
No, I don't know. I was seeing how far we could take it before the gallery lost patience with us, and they haven't done it yet.
Brundle's completely out of order here, because Tamburello is clearly 1 corner, not 2. What's he talking about? Ascari is 1 corner at Monza. And I'm absolutely convinced that if you're flat out through it, like you are at the so-called turn 1 here, that's not a corner. It's not even a kink. It's just a vague undulation.
But they're right. They're 3-part corners, though, aren't they? That's the nuance.
Kimi Antonelli is heading down to the clearly defined first Ravazza. There's a Red Bull in the way.
That was super tender from the Red Bull. Yeah, copy.
Yuki nearly took the racing line, moved off the racing line.
That was super tender from the Red Bull. Yeah, copy.
Very difficult because everyone's just looking in the mirrors at this point. They're not getting the communication over the radio, and then they suddenly see at the last minute a car approaching, and this was the section here over the crest. You can't see too far in your mirrors, so then you see a car and then you jolt to get out of the way, but that car is already committed to going round you, and you start to get to this moment where it feels a lot more tense in the cockpit, where you're just moving as the one in front sees you and they jump out of the way and you both head towards the inside. Gets the heart racing a little bit.
Such a cool racetrack at so many different corners, and let's have a look at another moment which is going to provide the same thing. Lando Norris thinking about a move to the inside, everyone tripping over each other, outside, inside, still can't get by as he tries to make his way past Franco Colapinto in the Alpine.
If we see wheel-to-wheel racing like that on Sunday through those corners, I will be very happy. Not too often you see a move anyway into turn 4, only if someone gets really shuffled out wide at the 3-part Tamburello corner just before it.
We also saw Colapinto and Piastri having a little bit of a moment just before that replay started. They were side by side into the not at all corner, turn 1.
It's been a day out there where everyone's been tripping over each other. We're in the data gathering phase of the weekend, which is why it has descended somewhat into nonsense. Not entirely, although you may disagree. Here's the qualifying simulation run comparison between Piastri and Norris. And you can see Norris in the white shaded part of the racetrack, Piastri in the orange, and that tells a story. It looks very close between the pair of them once again.
Yeah, tale of two halves, isn't it? And the trade-off is massively sector 1 and 3. The middle sector, there's nothing in it. We saw Piastri's final sector, which he had the big slide coming over the curbs at the Variante Alta, and then maybe a little bit of traffic at the final corner as well. We didn't get a comparison of his first sector to see how he's managed to make up a quarter of a second on Norris there, because it's a pretty short sector as well. It ends after this corner, the Villeneuve chicane.
Something keeps scratching my foot on the braking into turn 2. I mean, I'll continue driving, but we need to check it. My flipping foot.
Ultimately, those two cars are so tight to each other that it really is just the tiniest little difference.
But actually, it wasn't on the lap. It was a quarter of a second to Piastri in the first half, and then a quarter of a second back to Norris on the second half. So whilst they are split by not very much, over the lap, if you put that together, McLaren should be another quarter of a second up the road, and they've already got a quarter of a second. 2 quarters equals half a second up the road. If the drivers, if you combine the first half of Piastri's lap and the second half of Norris's.
Would you purely put that down to driver differences? I think I know your answer here from the cool-down room, but would you purely put this down to driver differences, or could there be slight setup differences, giving them that different performance around different segments of the track? But it wasn't very clear on that graphic that one was quicker in one type of corner.
No, it was just a clean split at just after this corner, where half the lap Piastri's quicker, half is Norris. I don't think it'll be setup that dictates that, but I think it could be tyres. This is the C6, the super ultra hyper soft that we've got for the year, and maybe Piastri, by nailing that first sector, took a little bit more life by scrambling through Tamburello, let's say, or going too quick through Piratella, the fast corners. We saw him have the big slide at Variante Alta. Was that because he had actually taken too much on the C6, the fragile tyre, and Norris was a bit kinder on the tyres at the first part of the lap, and it paid him back later? So maybe there isn't that quarter of a second. It's a theoretical quarter of a second. Can either of them achieve it? I think Piastri, with a neater second half of his lap, he definitely didn't maximise what he had. Maybe if he just could rein it in slightly through the chicane, there certainly is another tenth in there.
George Russell getting closer to the back of Franco Colapinto's Alpine. There's Flavio Briatore, who first wandered into a Formula One paddock in 1988 and directly employed by the Renault Group rather than the Alpine Formula One team, as he continues overseeing the team principal roles after the departure of Ollie Oakes. Here's Max Verstappen getting as close as possible.
What's this guy doing, man? Is he GRS?
No idea.
Looked good for a second there. Hadjar, who has dropped it at the first chicane, at the Tamburello chicane, and is trying to recover. And will recover, will he? Inching closer to the racetrack to bring out the yellow flags, waiting for a gap in the traffic.
There's 20 cars on track, so it's not going to be too easy to find that gap. Mirror signal manoeuvre for Hadjar, who's still got the engine. He's not beached in the gravel.
So into the first turn, there's a gap after Bortoletto, so he's waiting for everyone to go by. Yellow flag is being waved either side of the racetrack, and then once Bortoletto's gone by, the team will tell him that it's safe to pull on to the circuit. You can't chance it. If you rejoin unsafely, it would be a trip to the stewards.
Well, he's got a nice big gap coming in the traffic coming up. The team will see it. Nice look at the new side pods on that Racing Bull just there after he spun. So thank you to Hadjar for showing us.
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Out of that gravel, waited, and then tried to just wheel spin to get quickly out, but hadn't cleared the gravel and just dug himself in there in the end.
And it's deeper than it looks. It's always deeper than it looks at these old school circuits. You have Zandvoort, for example, where they glue it down at turn 12, but apart from that, those gravel traps can cause you a bit of trouble, as we've seen from Isaac Hadjar, who's brought out the red flag, and here's how he did it. Seen so many drivers threaten to do that through the second part, but a big moment and carried all the way for a nudge into the tyre wall.
I was going to say, how he's managed to lose it there and not hit the barriers is quite impressive to try and keep going, but he did actually hit barriers fairly hard, but perfectly perpendicular there, so I don't think he would have done any lasting damage to the car. The tyre wall moving a little bit, and he just lost it through that second apex, which we've seen a few drivers do. Then had the save, get his foot into the final part of that three-part corner, and found the grass, and thus no more grip. There's a fair old clonk into the barriers.
Yeah, those tyres will be pretty hard. If you think those are road car tyres in bundles, usually with a little cylinder on the inside, with a conveyor belt essentially over where the advertising hoarding is. If you went up and pushed them with your hands, you wouldn't be able to deform them. So it's going to hurt the gearbox if you hit it like that.
But the angle that he's hit is just perfectly square. If you start putting angles on it, then you start to knock a corner off the car. But I think he may well have got away with that, apart from being beached and now being shepherded across the racetrack.
Well, the car was clearly still driving, so no real harm to the drive shaft. The marshals are telling him to cross the racetrack, so I think he's saying, no, I don't want to. Interesting. But
off to the tunnel for him.
Yeah.
There's a iconic old tunnel under the circuit. There's a lot in the middle of the circuit, this place. I'll tell you that if we still have time at the end of the red flag. Sam, what were you going to say?
Well, there's another nice view of the other change on the Racing Bull. You see those little aerodynamic elements either side of the cockpit. Well, they've copied that idea from Aston Martin, who've had those since the start of the season. Hadjar doesn't want to leave his car alone, but he's being told to. And obviously they've got that new side pod undercut. Big upgrade package, doesn't look like much. New floor on the car as well for Racing Bulls this weekend. They're based just up the road from this racetrack, so they use this as an opportunity to bring everything as late as possible onto both cars and hopefully improve their performance a little bit from where they are so far this season.
Yeah, known by so many different names over the years, we often refer to them as the Faenza-based team, and Faenza just down the straight road that leads to Imola. stuff as we get a green light at the end of the pit lane, and we get the cars out on the racetrack. 2 minutes to 6 local time.
What a setting. Beautiful setting for a race. The hills, banks, lovely natural spectator spots of an iconic racetrack. Old architecture in there as well. A ravine through the middle sector.
I don't want to interrupt, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the farmer monologue on Imola. There's a special place in the long history of good and bad, triumph and tragedy, forged around this circuit. It's an appropriate place for Formula 1 to visit in the week of its 75th anniversary. And those pole positions ever taken around this circuit by the late great Ayrton Senna. Michael Schumacher with some wonderful wins around here. Fernando Alonso, one of the best wins of his Formula 1 career at this racetrack. So many big moments.
There were a lot of bike racing as well, as in pedal bikes. The World Championship cycle race finished here a couple of years ago.
We've got,
it's such a nice setting for it.
It is indeed. Another cycling segment.
Two for two. Checkered flag.
So the cars are out there once again. Some practice starts at the end of the session. Weren't able to do that earlier on due to Gabriel Bortoletto's red flag. Bortoletto up in 16th. Again, comes to run that pace. He's looking very strong in comparison to Hulkenberg. Only 1 point scoring finish for the Sauber team, who find their cars in 16th and 19th positions. Sauber Motorsport will celebrate their 600th Grand Prix under all their names in Formula 1 this weekend. Their best ever qualifying for the team came from their very first visit. Karl Wendlinger was 5th on the grid in 1993.
You mentioned all of their names in Formula 1. They have always had Sauber in the name in some description. Even when it was owned by BMW, it still had Sauber in the name. As I understand it, we haven't seen the entry list yet, but as I understand it, for next year, the Sauber name will not be present on the grid because that company has been wholly taken over, is now wholly owned by the Volkswagen Audi group, and that team is obviously walking into Audi for next season with the new Audi designed and built power unit, which is going to be quite interesting to see. I think it's going to be a bit of a shock to the Formula 1 establishment having that massive manufacturer in the pit lane and in the paddock. They do things a little bit differently.
Got a good history in other forms of motor racing and returning to Grand Prix racing, trying to replicate taking home the largest trophy on multiple occasions. Stroll has been noted for failing to follow the race director's instructions for practice start, Sam Collins.
Yeah, this is something that was in the race director's notes. If a session was red flagged and then restarted to allow drivers to do practice starts, their practice start position was in a slightly different position on the exit of the pit lane, and I suspect that Stroll didn't pay heed to that instruction, did his practice start in the normal free practice position, which you're not really allowed to do.
Good session for Pierre Gasly on the qualifying simulation. He was 3rd fastest. He lines up for his practice start. Have to wait for all to complete theirs ahead of you. Then it's your turn. Lovely stuff to finish the day. The man who once again practice form. He's topped a practice session this year. Always looks good on a Friday if the circuit is to his liking. Gasly having 2 good sessions on the board, but not as good as McLaren. 1 and 2 in FP1, 1 and 2 in FP2. Lewis Hamilton finding questions to pose to his engineers about the brakes of that Ferrari. He will finish the session in 11th.
It's kind of the state of play, isn't it, in 2025? McLaren looking good, the 2 cars pretty evenly split. Qualifying will be absolutely critical tomorrow between those 2. And then really you're looking at Russell and Verstappen as the nearest threats, with Ferrari a bit further away and not particularly happy. The rest of them, the midfield looking close. Gasly getting high up in that one. Williams will be quick. Set nicely, but the order's not really mixed up for this weekend yet.
It's a great place for the race, and we are enjoying those pictures at the end of Practice Friday. Grand Prix, where Oscar Piastri finds himself quickest once again. Championship leader ahead of Lando Norris, tantalisingly in qualifying tomorrow. He's just 200ths of a second ahead. Gasly having a great lap to go into third. And it was George Russell in fourth, Max Verstappen P5, Charles Leclerc P6, and then it was Hadjar, Sonoda, Albon and Sainz on another encouraging pair of top 10 finishes for the Williams team. Lewis Hamilton in 11th. They will look at the brakes on that Ferrari. Oliver Behrman in 12th position. Franco Colapinto improving from FP1 to FP2 to 13th in the session. Fernando Alonso's best time set on the medium tyre. Everyone below him was on the softs. There was Lawson, Bortoleto, Stroll, Antonelli, Hulkenberg and Esteban Ocon. Well, my thanks to Alex, to Sam, to Jolyon and to you for enjoying this. We are going to wrap things up in the commentary box and we will send it down to the paddock for a little bit of analysis on all we've seen in the company of Laura Winter.
Thank you, Alex Jakes, Formula One's newest father. Congratulations to him. If you hadn't heard the good news, Alex Jakes became a father. Fist bumps from Davide Valsecchi for that news. Yeah, wonderful news. Congrats, Alex.